Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 12 of Stags in the Studio, WVOF Sports podcast series centered around Fairfield athletics, humanizing the athletes and the teams that you see play, and why there's no better time to run with the Fairfield University Stags. I'm Andrew Jameson, your sports director here at WVOF 88.5 FM. Thrilled to be back in our home studio in the Barone Campus Center. Want to thank the Media Center for all the 11 interviews beforehand there, but happy to be back here nonetheless. Joining me today, Michael Kelleher, one of our senior sports broadcasters, and waste no time with our introduction of Julian Radossich, defenseman, sophomore out of Ridgewood, New Jersey. Julian, thanks for taking time to come out to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I kind of just want to understand the recruitment story first. How did Fairfield find you, and why did you commit to Fairfield?
I kind of started my sophomore summer. I saw Coach G at a tournament, and we weren't allowed to talk yet because it wasn't September 1st of my junior year. So he was kind of just taking notes, and he was on my radar that he was there, and obviously playing in front of a bunch of different coaches and stuff at those prospect days and having them come to different high school games. But when that date rolled around, Coach G reached out to me and kind of just let me know that he wanted me here, and that was something that, getting a text on the first day of recruiting is really gives you a boost to confidence and just gives you just the willpower to keep going and know that you're doing something right. So that was huge. And then throughout my junior year, talking to a few other coaches, and Fairfield's still in the back of my mind. And then summer going into senior year, I just kind of pulled the trigger on Fairfield, and I liked what Coach G was offering me. Knew that he cared. He was writing me handwritten letters just to know that he wanted me here. So that was a huge boost as well, and just really felt welcome and love the atmosphere of the campus. So
yeah. Kind of now to kind of fast forward to the last couple weeks with both overtime wins against Sacred Heart and Manhattan. Kind of take me what was going through your mind and what Coach Baxter was kind of talking to you about through both of those games.
Yeah, well, we always had the mindset that we just had to make a stop and get the ball down to our offense, and they were going to finish it for us. And whether that took 2 overtimes like it did for Sacred Heart or just the one for Manhattan, just having faith in our guys that they were going to do what they were supposed to do as long as we got them the ball. And Coach Baxter's big on that. He was a big proponent for having fun when you're playing sports. Obviously, it's a game at the end of the day. You're out there to have fun, so he was big on that. We got an extra, 10 minutes of lacrosse against Sacred Heart.
Double overtime? Or no, more than that.
Yeah.
It was 4 OTs, I think.
Or I think it was double overtime.
It was double, yeah.
Oh, double. Yeah, it's 4 minutes per. That's what I'm getting mixed up.
We had a lot of extra time there. That was really fun. And then just keeping not getting too down on yourselves when you get put in that second overtime, because obviously they're worrying about it too. They're stressing about it, and just keeping our minds clear as a defense and getting our offense the ball. So
yeah, and how does the team stay locked in those moments, whether it's on the offensive end or defensive? Because I know golden goal is a term that anything can happen at any given moment. It's one of the beautiful aspects of lacrosse in a sense. So how do you guys almost bend but not break mentality in those overtime periods as you're 2-0 this year in them?
Yeah, well, key thing for us again is trusting our guys on the other end. So I trusted Eli and Nate down low with me and our D-middies and LSMs to make plays and get the ball back, and then you trust the offense to do what they're going to do. Sooner or later, they're going to put the ball back in the net. So just believing in that, and then just keeping a level head, not getting too high, not getting too low throughout the whole game. I think we did a good job with that. And Coach G again was saying good teams show up when they're needed. So I think we really showed up there in those 2 overtimes.
And it's obviously evident 4-0 is a start that you can't take for granted. I just want to kind of dive in a little bit. What do you feel like is the biggest difference from this year's team compared to last year's team? Last year, you guys had first time making the CAA playoff since, I believe, 2016. Just want to kind of get in your mindset, as obviously 4-0 is a start that, again, as I said, you can't take for granted. So what's the difference between this year's team to last year's?
Well, I would say the connection between our guys. I feel like we're a huge locker room team. We really everyone's all in, everyone's bought in. We're not really divided into cliques and friend groups and stuff in there. We're really just one team. And I think too we've cut down on complaining. I know it sounds like a small thing, but whether it's just going out to practice on after a long week or whatever, what a certain exercise and lift, instead of complaining, it's we get the opportunity to be here. We get the opportunity to play at a university like this and represent this campus. So, yeah, it's a big part of it for us.
And kind of just to dig deeper on that, what's kind of been the mentality kind of since the beginning of the season? I mean, You're 4-0 now, nationally ranked. Like, how have you been able to achieve that, get to that point?
Just taking things one step at a time. You know, we say next game's a big one just because it's the next game. So not overlooking a team. I feel like we might have slightly done that with Manhattan. I feel like we didn't play close to our best game there just because we thought it was going to be an easy win. We were going to go out there and roll them, and they put up a good fight. And that was really like a shock for us to kind of lock us back in. And thank God we ended up winning that game because that could have been an easy one. Obviously, they score one goal and we're done. So, but just taking things one step at a time, going through our small details and letting that take care of the big things, like whether it's defensively, foot positioning, or staying low, and offensively, just making that next pass. So, just small things leading up and getting it done for us.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the strength of schedule. The first game, Lehigh, ranked, I believe, number 20 in the preseason. Then, obviously the reigning Ivy League conference champs. You guys have had a very tough schedule to start. Like Sacred Heart and Manhattan are two quality teams. Both of them were in the MAC championship last year. What do these types of wins do for the team's confidence moving forward?
Well, it definitely lets us know that we can play with all the teams on our schedule. Obviously, Towson and Delaware are big ones for us, big rivalries for us, and just knowing that we play good teams leading up to them and treat every game like it's a rivalry game, a must-win game, is something that I feel like we do really well. And just knowing that we can compete with these good teams, we can beat these good teams, is really boosts us into the next game there.
Yeah, and I guess going off of what Mike said earlier about like this year's team to last year's team, were there any points of emphasis or changes this offseason that Coach Baxter like prioritized? It can be something in your like individual game or collective game as particular, but like are there any like notable changes in like your offseason workout regimen?
Nothing too serious. I mentioned complaining before. I know that sounds minuscule and something that you don't really think about, but I feel like that's huge for us. And just knowing that all 55 guys on our roster are bought into one goal, and no one's like, oh, thank God practice is over, now I get to go home and do whatever I want. Like, the guys they want to be there. Everybody knows why the other person's there, and you play for the guys next to you. And I feel like that's huge thing for our program.
And you mentioned coming into this year, I believe 18 first years and 5 transfers. And one people don't know about lacrosse is they're huge rosters. Like, see, baseball has huge rosters, basketball is relatively small, but lacrosse, it's a big roster. So how has the coaching staff as a whole like kind of come to unify this team? And it feels like you guys are feeding off of one each other's energy right now, whether it's with the snowbank celebrations or just in the chemistry and the dynamic passing in the offensive end.
Yeah, well, it goes back to our locker room again. Nobody's singled out. Like, we're not divided into you guys play, so you guys are friends, and you guys don't, so you guys are friends. We're all in it together, and those guys who don't play and who are giving us good looks in practice and going through the scout, knowing the scout so they can execute it well and give those guys who do play a good look is monumental for our team. And just those guys buying in, absolutely everybody buying in is huge, and it really goes a long way. Because those guys could easily just check out, and you come in as a freshman expecting to play. Obviously, everybody here is probably the best player on their high school team. And you come in expecting to play, expecting to be really good in college, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're 3 or 4 down on the depth chart, and you just got to own your role, give those guys a good look, not get too full of yourself, and just do what you can for the team, know your role, and just do what you can, yeah.
To kind of even go on a more personal level, in the game, as we talked about, kind of that game against Lehigh, you had 7 caused turnovers in that game, which now sets a record in Fairfield program history. Last time that was done was George Elmquist back in 2019 when he had 2 games where he had 5 caused turnovers. How does it feel to kind of be in that history books at this point in your career?
Well, it feels good, but I feel like anybody else put in my situation could have done the same thing, either Nate or Eli. I was just given the opportunities, put in the right places to make those plays, and I feel like I was prepared well enough to do that with the scout that we do. Back from, again, those guys who don't get time in the games, giving me good looks and just knowing what to expect with their scout and kind of what they wanted to do. And I believe Nate or Eli in that spot could have done the same thing. I just was in the right place, right time. So
yeah, Matt, you mentioned the scout. I'm kind of curious now because I feel like that we don't get as great of a lacrosse behind the scenes look. What does a typical week look like necessarily in terms of that? So I guess after the Manhattan game this Saturday, what has the lead up to this Providence game coming up looked like on a daily basis?
Yeah, we had that Sunday off, obviously, to just recover, take it easy, ice the bruises. Yeah. And then Monday we came in, we just did film. We didn't do anything on the field. We just watched our film against Manhattan, figured out what we needed to do, what went wrong, what went well. And then Tuesday, we're back out on the field again. Just little bit of Providence scout, which is just knowing like their general offensive sets. This is more defensive minded. I don't really know. What
Yeah,
the
no,
offensive
you're all
guys do,
good.
but
Yeah.
just knowing their general offensive sets, their personnel a little bit, and then just focusing on us. Again, going back to what we did well, what we did wrong against Manhattan, kind of figuring out, dividing that up, staying with what we did well, and kind of figuring out what we could have done better. And then Wednesday, same thing, a little bit more heavy on the scout. And then today we came in, went over the scout even more, talked about what we need to do to beat their team and just execute better than them. And then tomorrow we'll dive into we call it reels, which is we'll watch defensive, offensive, and then midway, which is just writing and clearing like what we could have done better. And then the positives for that I feel like is huge for us, just watching what we did well, and then a little bit of their reels as well, same thing. So, and then Saturday just get there a few hours early, get ready to go mentally, and play the game. So
Yeah, I mean, the national recognition, I think that has an underlooked impact on the mental side of it. Because on one hand, you can get carried away by it, but then I'm sure what Coach Baxter has emphasized also is, keeping your foot on the gas. So what is the national recognition and being ranked in two different polls, number 18 in Inside Lacrosse and number 20 from USA Lacrosse, mean for this team, as a whole, and even for you as an individual?
yeah, well, obviously it's cool. I mean, obviously sophomore in college, this is awesome. Like this was my goal in high school, was to be on a ranked Division I program, and it's cool, but we haven't won anything yet. We've only played 4 games this season, so obviously our goal is to win the conference and then go out and win the NCAA if possible. And we haven't done anything towards that yet. We haven't even played a conference opponent, so just keeping that in the back of our head. Yeah, it's cool, it's fun, but it means nothing at this point. So
Yeah, I know you mentioned that keeping the foot on the gas mentality. How is the team? It's very hard. You mentioned not to give in to the hype. Would you say there's a heightened urgency in practices? I know this week was a lot of film, but like, can you see more of the guys and teams just like locked in? Maybe the vibes are a little bit more focused and concentrated, and is legit like the real deal. We're locked in mentality.
well, I think we're treating this week like we've done so far this season. It's just like a big thing I said before was joy. It's just having fun out there. So not obviously it's serious when we're in practice and trying to get better, but there's also an element of you're out there to have fun.
Yeah.
So we're having a good time at the end of the day, but when we do need to lock it in and hit our details, I feel like we're doing a great job of that. So
I think personally for me, being in the broadcasting field and seeing your guys' play, I think one question I also have is this year especially, it seems like their game times have changed and stuff like that. So like take me through the daily preparation, just like the day of a game. So it's like if a game starts at like 12 on one day, but on another day it's supposed to like start at 7. How does that preparation change for you?
So on our later days where the games start, I'd say later Saturdays, we've done, for home games at least, we've had like a little walkthrough where guys are required to go to the locker room and either get recovery or go out on the field and just get a little stick work or something, or just sit in the locker room and watch some film or go through the scout. And I think just having that mentality that it's a game day, like not just those block of hours where we're playing a game is huge, and having guys locked in that whole day. I know it could get difficult too, with especially those later games, but just having that mindset that it's a game day and we're not here for 3 hours. So, and then usually on those earlier kind of games, we'd have a team meal up in the Tully and then go to the locker room, and you'd have 2 or 3 hours to just kind of get your head right and stretch and what you need to do. And I feel like that's huge too, just having everybody on the same page. Just we're going to go out there and do what we do, not let any noise or rankings or whatever affect how we play. So
Yeah, you mentioned 3 of your first 4 games have been home. And thinking road ahead, let's say like the road is a different animal compared to at home. And I'm thinking in particular that one time you play Towson is on the road. So how are you guys? Obviously, you have this home game versus Providence, but then you are at St. John's on the road. So how are you guys approaching, these road games and, trying to block out the noise? Like, are there any, like, particular, like, things along those lines we should be aware about?
Nothing in specific, but I feel like if we just go out with the same mindset we did against Brown, we got off the bus, energy was at a constant level the whole time. It wasn't really like we were getting too low. Like, it wasn't too bad of a drive, like 2.5 hours on the bus, so not terrible. But we came out, we were in the locker room warming up and stuff, so we came out with good energy, and we kept that through the game. We came out, started hot in that game, obviously, which was, I think, huge for us, and just rolled that momentum all the way through. And I think if we do that same thing against St. John's and Towson later down the line, could be a good recipe for us there.
Now, you mentioned a lot of these games have been back and forth. To say, like, it's been, think back to that Lehigh game, it was a game of runs. Same thing with Sacred Heart, and Manhattan was more so back and forth. Give and go. Both of the goalies were playing phenomenal. Hirsch, I believe, had 12 saves that game, and he was CAA Defensive Player of the Week at one point. Want to give a shout out to the goalie there. But kind of going off of that, CAA, it's more competitive than ever, I feel like. Towson's 0-4, but look at who they've played. Johns Hopkins and Syracuse, two powerhouse teams in the country. And Delaware's also receiving AP votes. They just recently lost to Penn, who is a great team in their own right. How are you guys using this tough non-conference slate, playing the likes of Lehigh and Sacred Heart to prepare you guys for a physical and competitive conference schedule?
Yeah, well, Towson and Delaware are always going to be good games, and I think this year especially, too, they both have strong rosters, and this being the last year Delaware's in our conference, too, really puts a chip on our shoulder to not let them go out on a win. And obviously, we lost to them in OT, the semis last year for the CAA, and that's another chip on our shoulder there is not having that feeling again. And all the guys coming back know exactly what that feels like to end your season on a loss and say goodbye to your seniors and grad transfers and everybody. Just that's it. I think we're going to try to avoid that, obviously, and do what we can to use these early games to build momentum and just roll that through the rest of the season.
What did that game in particular back in May against Delaware? And that was a heartbreaking game, I will say, the least. Delaware and Towson still regarded as the two top teams in the CAA, evident in the preseason polls. I think Towson got 6 first-place votes and Delaware got 2. But does that that chip on the shoulder is obviously still there, as you mentioned. I'm just curious, are those games more so that you guys are necessarily looking forward to, or is it, as you mentioned, kind of one game at a time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say we're not looking forward to it, but obviously it's in the back of people's minds. Like, that's our conference rivalry, but we are, I feel like, doing a great job of pushing that to the side and focusing on these next teams. I feel like that's going to be huge for St. John's, too, especially playing them away on a Tuesday. That could be a tough game for us. Just focusing on that, taking the 3 days we have leading up to that between Providence and St. John's to really just lock into that and then finish out this week and go out there and beat Providence and then move on to the next one from there. So
yeah, and how are you guys, I know you guys are aware of the short turnaround. 3 days is not a lot of time. Sometimes it's a Wednesday, Saturday. Sometimes it's just Saturday into Tuesday, though. How does the team, I guess in a sense, respond so quickly to these types of turnarounds?
Yeah, well, it's definitely difficult, but you go from having 7 days to prepare to 3. It's definitely going to be difficult, but having those guys who can give us the looks in practice and the coaches who work hard on the scouts and the film and everything really helps us out, and just knowing what we're going to see, the personnel that they have, and just taking those 3 days to just lock into that upcoming team is absolutely huge.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking ahead. Obviously, Providence coming up in a few days, but not too far in the future. Conference play starts, and what's the kind of mentality for the team as you kind of start to close out on non-conference play and start getting into conference play?
Not really sure what it's going to look like this year, to be completely honest with you, but last year was kind of just same old. Like, we play every game like it's win or go home, and I think we need to keep that same mentality this year of just going out there and needing to win. I feel like that was huge for us last year, pushed us over some tough opponents towards the end of the season.
And you mentioned the Manhattan game. You kind of overlooked them a little bit. I just recalled this in the back of my mind. Hofstra, I believe, is off to a 3-1 start in their own right. So how are you guys, obviously Delaware and Towson are the big ones, but how are you guys going to treat every game like it's win or go home, like as you mentioned, not get caught up in the overlooking of the game, because the CAA is competitive as ever, but, as with any sports, which will make them unpredictable, is, any team can be any other team at any given day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, keeping, your eyes locked on the next one is huge for us, as I said, and that was a lapse we had with Manhattan, I feel like, and I think it's good we had one this early on in the season to just know that we can't do that again, and we just got to double it down and lock in even more and not overlook teams, especially when it comes to conference play, because all those games mean even more towards our conference schedule and our placement in the tournament if we end up getting there. So Just huge to look forward to who we're playing and not too far past it.
Yeah, no, kind of just one more thing here. Like you mentioned, one of the biggest differences earlier from this year to last year was kind of like the maturity almost a little bit and like the little bit of like the less complaining. Who deserves credit, I guess, for that like bend but not break mentality? Like if you want to allude to it as like a collective buy-in or the like individual members that just like get the team going, like captains or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's generally collective, but there's some times where captains will crack down on it, which is big shout out to Matt Rice, Roy Thompson, and Luke Okupski for stepping up this year. Luke obviously was a captain last year too, so he's been through it before. He knows what's going on, and Roy and Matt are big leaders on the defensive end. So both of them been here for 4 years, know how this program works, know what works well, know what doesn't, and having them step up and kind of keep guys in line and keep people bought in and not, as I said before, like overlooking teams or overlooking practices even is huge.
Yeah, and I guess one last thing with like the personal side, what do you think has been the biggest growth in your own individual game? Like I know the 7 caused turnovers in that season opener, but Lehigh speaks for itself. But I think the play is more evident than the numbers show. So I'm kind of curious from your perspective what the biggest growth you believe in your game has been.
Yeah, well, last year I came in, obviously had to learn the whole new set, had to learn everybody's names, had to learn how the coaches like treated practice, how everything was run. So couldn't really take up a leadership role, obviously not knowing too much about the program. And I switched positions this year to close defense instead of LSM. So I'm now on the field for majority, if not the whole game. And I feel like that's allowed me to take more like quarterback kind of role back there and help direct people to kind of have our defense move as a unit instead of me just like kind of playing on my own like I did last year. And I feel like that's huge for my personal growth and just seeing the field as like 6 guys instead of just one guy trying to make a play. So
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you can become the like student to the teacher almost in a sense. What kind of advice have you given a lot of the first years? Because there are a lot of first year, I believe 18, and you said earlier not a lot of them are going to play. You can be the best person on your high school team, but 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. So how do you kind of keep those guys on the bench, morale up, and what have you taught or given them that a lot of upperclassmen did for you last year?
Well, teaching them our principles, I feel like is huge too. The complaining part is huge. Being grateful for every opportunity we have to play lacrosse and to use our facilities and our field, and just having fun too. Because you go out there, you're not having fun, you're not going to play well, and you're going to end up dreading it. And then that just leads down a whole road of maybe you're not playing anymore. So just trying to avoid all that. And then for our guys who do play, I feel like teaching them through the defense and like what we do as a 7-man unit down there is huge. And we have a lot of freshmen who play D-mid for us. I know Andrew Caston's getting a lot of time, John Flynn. Those guys are instrumental to our defense too. So having them on the same page, getting them up to speed as fast as we could was huge.
Yeah, so Fairfield plays Providence Saturday. Before we go, I got some quick hitters we like to do, kind of just get to know you, humanize a little bit.
Right.
So you got to go to pregame song?
Money Music by Yahweh's Disciple. I don't know if that's allowed to be aired on the radio, but
No, but it's personal. We're good. This was on YouTube, so don't worry about that. Pregame meal.
Just whatever the Tully's serving, usually grilled chicken and rice.
There you go. So that answers my question. Favorite dining option, I'm assuming it's the Tully also?
Yeah, but Tully banana bread, chocolate chip banana bread specifically.
Really?
Yeah, they never miss with that.
Okay, I might have to try that one. I'm
Yeah.
usually just a chocolate chip muffin, but
It's really good.
all right, I'll make that note for tomorrow. Any pregame superstitions?
I shuffle cards and play card games before games, so I say that would be one of them.
Yeah, no. And then finally, favorite memory thus far at Fairfield?
Nothing specific, but just being a part of the team, being friends with all those guys is huge. Just having 55 like automatic friends when I got here was huge for my first year, and carrying that through to my roommates now this year is huge. So
Do you see that carrying even outside of the field also?
yeah, 100%. I mean, our seniors who graduated last year, the kids who graduated even 2 years before them come back to our game sometimes. We're all good friends with those guys. It's like a brotherhood, a connection that you have outside. Even if like in 2 years when I graduate, going into the real world, getting a job, like those guys are in your corner if you need help or just living in the area and you need someplace to crash. So
Final message for alumni, fans, why should we be excited about this team moving forward?
I mean, this is a special group. This is the most connected team I've ever been a part of. Just 55 guys who are 10 toes down for each other and really want to go out there to win. So
You heard it here from Julian Radossich there, preseason All-CAA honoree, although the job is far from finished. So from Andrew Jameson, Michael Kelleher, and our guest Julian Radossich, thank you for joining us. Go Stags.